Hello, my name is Behan. I'm the manager of Informatics and Analytics at the Ontario Brain Institute. Today I'll be talking about our abstract entitled Using a Privacy-Preserving Record Linkage to Facilitate an Ongoing Crosswalk Between Research and Health Administrative Databases at this year's International Population Data Linkage Network Conference. This is a joint project between the Ontario Brain Institute, or OBI, the Institute for Clinical Evaluative Sciences, ICES, and Indoc Research, with all of us based in Ontario, Canada. I would also like to acknowledge the sponsors of the conference as listed here. To give some further background to the research and health administrative databases involved in this project, I'm just going to give a short introduction to the OBI and ICS. So starting with OBI, we are a provincially funded, not-for-profit organization in Ontario that accelerates neuroscience discovery and innovation, benefiting both patients and the economy. Our main aim is to establish Ontario as the world's leader in brain research, commercialization, and care. The other major entity involved here is ICS. It is Ontario's independent, non-profit, world-leading research organization that uses population-based health and social data to produce knowledge on a broad range of healthcare issues. The scope of this project is to accelerate data linkages between these organizations, that is, coupling the research data held by OBI with the health administrative data sets at ICS. On this next slide, I want to talk some more about how research data is managed by OBI. In collaboration with Indoc Research, we have developed a neuroinformatics platform called BrainCode. It is a large-scale neuroinformatics platform designed to support the collection, storage, federation, sharing, and analysis of different data types across several brain disorders as a means to understand common underlying causes of brain dysfunction and develop novel approaches to treatment. This slide outlines the current data holdings and can be accessed at braincode.ca. As you can see from this graphic, we have over 20,000 participants with data on BrainCode. The geolocator on the left shows that while most data is being collected at sites in Ontario, we also support data collection in other parts of Canada, for example, Alberta and British Columbia. To the right, we have listed our 6 major research programs in the areas of cerebral palsy, concussion, depression, epilepsy, neurodegeneration, and neurodevelopmental disorders. Each of these programs is using BrainCode for data management activities, with just over 18,000 participants across these programs completing clinical assessments. With the research programs, we've also developed BrainCode common data elements. These are standardized clinical assessments used across different programs, and their uptake is graphed here. If you would like to learn more about BrainCode, I've included a link to a manuscript we published in 2018 in Frontiers in Neuroinformatics detailing the technical nature of the platform. I'll be posting more details on these references at the end of the presentation. This next slide goes into a bit more detail around the data governance of the BrainCode platform. For data to come onto BrainCode, 3 elements are required: participation agreements, standardized consent language, and research ethics board approval. I'll now walk through each one in a bit more detail. So starting with the participation agreement, this is an agreement between the site where the data is being collected and OBI. It's akin to a data transfer agreement and binds the site to OBI's governance and security policies for BrainCode. This agreement also includes a Schedule C, which outlines the specific data elements to be uploaded with appropriate consent forms and ethics approvals, which is a nice segue to the 2 other points on this slide. So OBI has created standardized informed consent language that is used across all research projects that plan to use BrainCode. This consent language outlines to the participants how their data will be managed in BrainCode, and importantly, how it will be linked to health and administrative databases such as ICS. This language is incorporated into existing study-informed consent forms to describe in clear lay language how data will be transferred and managed on BrainCode. The final item needed for data transfer to BrainCode is ethics approval. Our team at OBI reviews and tracks all ethics approval letters to make sure we are managing data in compliance with ethics approval and participant consent. If you would like to learn more about the data governance in BrainCode, I've included a link to a manuscript we published in 2019 in Frontiers in Genetics, providing further details. As we now have covered the data governance of BrainCode, let's move on to discussing how we actually support the linking of data from BrainCode with ICS. This is done through the encryption of health card numbers and a deterministic linkage being performed between BrainCode and ICS. So within Ontario, the majority of individuals who access the healthcare system have a unique identifier, the Ontario Health Insurance Plan, or OHIP number. Due to OBI's status under Ontario's privacy legislation, BrainCode collects an encrypted version of this OHIP number from study participants. And this encryption occurs at data entry using a public key mechanism. The private key is inaccessible at this point. The same homomorphic encryption algorithm is applied to relevant identifiers within ICS data holdings. And following this, encrypted open numbers from brain code are securely transferred to ICS, where a comparison computation calculates differences between the encrypted sets. These differences are then sent to a trusted third party who has no access to the original data to decrypt the differences using the private key. A zero difference indicates a set of matching identifiers, and the results are returned to ICS. Now, this privacy-preserving linkage was actually presented at the last International Population Data Linkage Network Conference in 2018, and I've included a link to the abstract from those conference proceedings. Since that presentation in 2018, we have successfully completed 3 data linkage pilots between brain code and ICS. These 3 pilots were all successfully completed with over 99% success rates in matching in these studies. These pilots involved participants from our research programs in epilepsy, neurodevelopmental disorders, and a study focused on stroke linked to our neurodegeneration program. Analysis is ongoing and results from these studies are forthcoming. While it was a great achievement to complete all 3 pilots with these success rates, each of these projects required a significant amount of human resources in terms of management, but also computational resources in terms of running 3 separate linkages. Given that we encountered these significant resources issues, a more permanent solution was required if we wanted to pursue further data linkages for our programs in an efficient manner. For this, we had to go back and look at our data governance and see what was possible to improve the linkage process. As a reminder, data linkages between brain code and ICS are based upon participants providing informed consent with related ethics approval. Here, I've taken out the specific wording in our generic consent language, which states, your encrypted HALCA number or other data we collect in this study may be used to link with data stored in independent databases such as OHIP or other databases in a secure environment. Given this context, we started examining scenarios where, rather than approaching data linkages on a project-by-project basis, it might be possible to link all participants from brain code with ICS based upon this consent form language with related ethics approval. This approach would allow for the creation of a crosswalk linkage between ICS and brain code and minimize both human and computational resources as experienced during the pilot projects mentioned on the previous slide. This approach of linking all participants between brain code and ICS was presented to the Information and Privacy Commissioner of Ontario in 2019 to help us determine whether this large-scale linkage was possible. Following that meeting, we have since executed a services agreement between OBI and ICS to create this crosswalk linkage. We will only be linking encrypted HALCA numbers and a permanent random ID number between brain code and ICS. Projects looking to leverage this crosswalk linkage will require ethics approval, which will also cover the transfer of study research data from brain code to ICS. For example, any clinical assessments, as you saw at the beginning of the talk, will be covered through such ethics approval. Altogether, the creation of this crosswalk will allow for a more streamlined approach of data linkage between brain code and ICS. Our 6 research programs will now be better able to leverage this data linkage for combining research data with health and administrative data. Finally, such an approach will significantly reduce overall resourcing requirements, enabling more efficient data linkages, and contributes to linking population-based health and healthcare data that are routinely collected, termed broad data, with more detailed clinical and biological data, termed deep data. I've included a reference to a report on this linking of broad and deep data from an international workshop held in Toronto back in 2014 between the OECD, OBI, and the Institute of Health Policy, Management and Evaluation from the University of Toronto. Finally, I would like to thank our colleagues at ICS, Indoc Research, and OBI, who have worked together on these pilot linkages and developing this crosswalk linkage. This final slide includes references as mentioned throughout the presentation. Please reach out to me if you have any further questions on this project. My contact details can be found on the Ontario Brain Institute website. Thank you.